vocab that we need to talk about or you need to know. Obviously, you know what a circle looks like, but a circle is the set of all points, equidistant, from a single specific point, which is the center of the circle. Okay. And a circle is named by its center. So you could see notation, just circle P, or the little circle with the center P. You also need to know what the radius is. Most of you, I think, can identify a radius. It's defined, though, by a segment with one end point at the center of a circle, and the other on the circle. Okay, so in this diagram, PA is a radius. Diameter. Both endpoints on the circle contains the center. The reason that is important is because we will have other endpoints on the circle that don't go through the center. Is Mrs. Rush? Yes. Sure. Yes. Okay, you, Mr. Benison. Okay, so just because you have two endpoints on a circle doesn't mean it's a diameter. It does have to go through the center. So BC in this case would be considered a diameter. All right. When we talk about congruent circles, one way that we know that they're congruent is they have congruent radii. Okay? If the radius of one circle is congruent to the radius of another, then the circles would have to be congruent. Central angles is an angle whose vertex is the center of a circle. We'll be dealing with angles in this chapter and the next that are inside a circle, but they're not a central angle unless the vertex is the center point. So that's why we need to go through some of these definitions. Okay. Angles inside, interior angles, are not necessarily central angles. Okay. We're using central angles for some identification purposes and actually in identifying arcs. So, all right. Now, before we do more of the vocab, because we're going to be talking about naming arcs, identifying arcs, we're going to do a common use of the circles, which is a pie chart. Okay? We're not going to do the entire, every measurement, but this is one thing that you should know. It's probably one of the more useful things. And these don't have to be perfect, but just so you get the idea. When you look at a pie chart, and this particular pie chart is how people, an example of how someone spends their entire 24 hours. This one has sleep, 31%, food or eating, 9%, work, 20%, must-dos, 7%, entertainment, 18%, and the other 15% is other or miscellaneous. Okay. I mean, obviously, a 24-hour day, you need to represent all 24 hours. Okay, now, I know that, a lot of programs anymore, you just give it the information, it'll make the pie chart for you in the correct proportions. But since we're talking about the geometry behind some of this, if you had to create this yourself and you wanted it to be to scale, how would you do that? I mean, we know what percentages, we want to represent, but how would you make sure your angles are correct? Okay. The first thing you need to think of is how many degrees are we representing here? A complete circle would be how many degrees? 360. Okay. So if you just want to represent a portion of it, then we're doing actually a percent of 360, right? Yes? And if you really break it down to what percent means, percent is per 100, yeah? That's what percent means if you're considering like the Latin roots. So say I want an angle for sleep, for instance, okay? And that is 31%. So I would say 31 hundredths. Now, if you already know what the decimal form of that is, perfect. Okay, but if you don't, that's why we're talking about per 100. What does of translate to? Times. Okay, so if I want to know what my angle should be, the decimal form of 31% is 0.31 times 360. Which is 111.6, right? So if you're really being exact, you do 111.6 degrees for that portion of your circle, okay? If you want to be somewhat exact, maybe do 111.5. But if you're rounding, you should round to 112, right? Okay, so that part should be 111.6 degrees. Okay, we're not going to do all of these, but let's do the 9%. I want you guys to take a second and determine what degrees would represent the food or eating part of that person's day. Okay. I believe on the upcoming quiz or the test, there is at least one of these where you have to calculate the degrees.